Hello and welcome to another video. So this is going to be relatively quick, probably one of my fastest videos I reckon for decks so far, and this is Aggro Sword. This was used in the Grand Prix, no shocker there. Reasonably cheap deck, only running 3 legendaries there and a handful of gold, so can't really go too wrong with the deck. Basic idea, extreme pressure, just keep pushing it out till your opponent can't handle it anymore. So we're going to get right into it and check it out. So similar to some of the blood decks I've played that are aggro, the idea of this deck is to be extremely quick. Usually you'll know if you've won or lost by about turn 5 or 6, that's usually kind of the maximum, and it's very easy for your opponent to concede in the extreme early game, as you're going to see in some of these clips, where if you curve out pretty much perfectly, your opponent really doesn't have enough to counter it, especially in matches against a blood, in particular, as they are dealing a lot of self-damage, and the amount of storm you run very easily counters them. Of course, going first also gives you a slight edge, but really I've found this deck doesn't make a big difference either way, as you are just that super aggressive. Of course, the exception being against Heal Haven, where you can have a really difficult matchup because they're more focused on mitigating your damage and clearing your board. So we can pretty much go face continuously from here. We don't really have any worry about not doing so. Of course, leaving up the 4-2 isn't great, but I feel like it was a safe option, as really they're only going to trade it off and not really make a big dent in their own points. So Juliet and Perseus, just again, as much pressure as you can put on the board is always what you want. We've already got the blood player down to 10, which is right where we want them. And they're going to deal more damage to themselves, so we can't really go too wrong. With a quick Evo turn, we should actually be reasonably set up here. So we can go for 3 damage off this. We can also use this Fatal Spell Bomb and Princess Juliet to mitigate any healing. Then we have Sky Commander and Dragon Knights, both with decent storm effects to really close out this game in the next turn. Definitely makes these reasonably fast, especially when they're doing self-damage. It's very hard for them to mitigate it. Alexandrite Demon, not a problem. And now we win thanks to Dragon Knights. We also could have played Sky Commander, but I felt Dragon Knights was just a little less hassle to play out. Following on immediately from that game, we have against another Blood player. SwordCraft, super popular. Who would have thought it? Definitely no shock that we're going up against Blood again. But it is definitely one of the better matchups for this deck. While I haven't played hundreds of games with this deck, I did play a solid 10 to 15 games, and honestly it was very easy to win most of them. But some of them were like turn 2 concedes pretty consistently, as you'll see, and others were just too drawn out to really give this deck exactly what it was meant to be doing. Definitely not worth showing those ones off for you guys. So this 1-1 is one of my favorites. Being able to clash and gain stats is a huge advantage, especially when you're generating a loot card as well. It's just such a good card. Magical Marksman, still one of the better cards. Fatal Spellbomb's amazing against Blood, clearing out the 5-3. Florus is always good. Servant of Lust, also a good card to target. And it looks like they're trying to keep up with me by being aggressive, but we're just going to pretty much wipe them, use our Evo comfortably, and go face for as much damage as we can get right now. Which, like I said, fairly quick games. Will end in concede turn 4. And our final matchup is against Dragon. Oh, sorry, Rune. For some reason I thought it was Dragon. No, that was the only game one of the few games I'd lost, sorry, was Dragon, because Dragon is actually quite a difficult matchup. Rune, on the other hand, is pretty straightforward, as most Rune decks are reasonably slow, so taking advantage of aggro is fairly easy. The biggest negatives to this deck, I find personally, tends to be Portal, Haven, and Dragon. They can be quite difficult depending on, of course, the archetype and deck build, but that doesn't mean you're completely out of the running. If you have a fairly solid hand and they have a mediocre one, usually you can pull a win out if you're lucky. Of course, then it becomes much more of an RNG based game. So I really liked Rapier Master. I've used her in a few matches now, and I found that she's actually quite a comfortable card. Even if you have to play her out as a 1-drop to be aggressive against Blood, it is always a nice drop, as the stat gain is very, very easy to ramp up. So, as you can see, very quick. Once you've got an aggressive board against Rune, very easy to have them concede. So I can definitely see why this deck did exceptionally well in the Grand Prix and why it held its own really well, of course. With Blood being very popular, that's probably why it did so well. If Blood drops off, this deck will probably drop down a little bit because, of course, its most favourable matchup tends to be Blood, followed by anything else that isn't, of course, control and healing type decks. So if you guys did enjoy this video, of course the deck list will be in the description below. On a final note, we're going to have a lot more videos coming up with more decks, of course. I'm going to keep to that daily upload schedule for you guys. I've got a community tab options now. I've had that for a few days and I've put out a couple of things on it, and hopefully you guys can enjoy that. If you do, make sure to comment and like those community posts to let me know so I know whether those things are alright. I don't want to spam you guys too much with those community posts. So again, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe. Until next time, see ya.